Hi, this is FUAD ABASOV, a broker with Right at Home Realty, and this is your monthly real estate statistics. After two consecutive interest rate hikes, the rapid pace of Canada's housing market rebound has begun to moderate. The flurry of activity seen throughout the spring, which followed the Bank of Canada's temporary pause in rate hikes, is now tapering off. This June, 7,481 homes sold on the Toronto Real Estate Board's MLS system, 16.5% more homes sold than last June. As Canadians grapple with interest rate hikes and high mortgage payments, there is a growing demand for houses with secondary units, like basement apartments and laneway homes. This comes at a time when the country is in the midst of housing crisis, with not enough properties being built for a growing population. A lot of first-time homebuyers are more interested in homes that already have an income-producing suite in it, or that can easily be added. In Toronto real estate, sale prices rise from January until the peak of the spring market. When the spring market is over, prices typically fall until August and then go up again in September. This rollover took place in May this year, signaling the end of the spring market. We didn't see home prices drop much in June, and this is due to the fact that higher rates have led to reduced inventory. Many homeowners are clinging onto the lower interest rates at which they financed their homes years ago. The lower supply of homes has pushed up prices even as demand sags because of expensive borrowing costs. And now, let's take a closer look at detached home sales in Toronto and surrounding areas. An average selling price of detached home in Toronto in June was $1.81 million, 3.64% higher than it was in June of last year. The amount of sold properties on the market were 11.4%. The amount of new listings went down by almost 5%. It took on average 11 days for the detached home to be sold in Toronto. An average selling price of detached home in Vaughan in June was $1.84 million, 2.5% increase compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was up by 27%. The amount of new listings was almost the same as last June. On average, it takes 11 days for a detached home to be sold in Vaughan. Richmond Hill. Detached home sales average price was $2.17 million, 29% increase compared to June of last year. Amount of sold properties went down by 2.25%. The amount of new listings went up by 23% compared to last June. It takes on average 16 days for a detached home to be sold in Richmond Hill today. City of Mississauga. An average selling price of a detached home $1.61 million. Similar price as it was in June of last year. The amount of sold properties on the market was up by 18%. The amount of new listings was down by 12%. It takes on average 12 days for a detached home to be sold in Mississauga today. In Markham, an average selling price of a detached home in June was $1.82 million, 2.5% increase compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was higher by 25%. The amount of new listings was also higher by 16%. It takes on average 10 days for a detached home to be sold in Markham today. Newmarket. An average selling price was $1.38 million in June, 8% increase compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was down by 3%. The amount of new listings went up by 11%. It takes on average 9 days for a detached home to be sold in Newmarket today. In Aurora, an average selling price of detached home in June was $1.8 million, increased by 5% compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was up by 9%. The amount of new listings was down by 7%. On average, it takes 8 days for a detached home to be sold in Aurora today. Innisfil. An average selling price in June was $990,000. Similar price was in June of last year. The amount of sold properties has increased by 27.8%. The amount of new listings went down by 24%. It takes on average 19 days for a detached home to be sold in Innisfil today. King City. An average selling price of detached home $2.88 million, 5.5% decrease compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties went up by almost 100% and there were 8 sold properties in the area. The amount of new listings went up also by 60%. It takes on average 16 days for a detached home in King City to be sold today. In Bradford, an average selling price of detached home in June was $1.18 million, an increase of 4% compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was down by 12%, the amount of new listings was down by 6%. On average, it takes 15 days for a detached home to be sold in Bradford today. Milton, average selling price of detached home $1.34 million in June, similar price as it was in June of last year. The amount of sold properties compared to June of last year went up by 6.6%, the amount of new listings went down by 13%. On average, it takes 9 days for a detached home to be sold in Milton today. An average selling price of detached home in Stoufville was $1.57 million in June, 4% decrease compared to June of last year. The amount of sold properties was up by 136%, 45 sold properties this June. The amount of new listings went up by 7%. On average, it takes 10 days for a detached home to be sold in Stoufville today. Barrie, average selling price of detached home in June was $886,000, similar price as it was in June of last year. The amount of sold properties went up by 31%. However, the amount of new listings went down by 41%. On average, it takes 16 days for the detached home to be sold in Barrie today. As the average price of a home in Toronto and surrounding areas rises year over year, there is a growing gap between the cost of condominiums and houses. It doesn't look so good for those thinking to upsize from condos to houses. If you'd like to receive your own personalized sales report about home sales in your neighborhood, please call me at 647-801-3401 or email me at sold@fuadhomes.com. Thanks for watching and see you next month.